Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. This is the pod no one was asking for, no one was expecting a live recap of round 10 at this time on Saturday night, guys. But what a ridiculous round of footy it has been so far. And I'm just tied up. I've got so much on tomorrow. Of course, we understand it's Mother's Day. So let me be the first to say happy Mother's Day to all the pod mothers out there and the mothers of your households. I've got commitments with that, got commitments with work. I'm putting in extra shifts, extra work so that I can keep doing the pod for free, try to keep the pod alive. And I couldn't let this weekend go by and not do a recap. So this is my only opportunity to jump on and talk about the footy. And it's just been pretty ridiculous. What's the point of leading a game? Is there actually any benefit to leading a game by 2 or 3 or 4 tries? If you only watched round 10, you'd say that's pretty much pointless. And even in this game, the Penrith Panthers led 18-6. They led 30-18 and didn't win. We've got our first tie of the season. So you've got to go back a while since we've had a tie, don't you? Unfortunately, that is a best bet loss there. And it's just chalk it down to yet another tight loss because I had Panthers -3.5. And so I was trying to update the record and I put in both versions of the record. And when it was 30-18, I thought, yep, beauty, we're going to jump on here. We're going to be 2-1. Panthers are just going to be too strong here and cover the low line. But of course, the Cowboys mount a comeback. It's a round we're never going to forget with these comebacks. Which does drop us to 1-2. Both losses today. Both times I had a favourite that led by 12 or more. I mean, I had Raiders earlier today, and the Raiders were up 20-0 if you didn't see the game, and lost by double digits. And then Penrith, who led by 12 on 2 different occasions during this game in Townsville. But give a lot of credit to the team that came back. And can I really have a whinge about losing best bets with massive leads when that was just par for the course this round? I guess let's just talk generally about these comebacks. All right. I just think it is the greatest sport. It is the greatest game on earth. It's so exciting. No lead is safe because teams can just ride waves of momentum. What I ultimately think it comes down to, like, why are all these teams making these massive comebacks or going on these runs? I think it ultimately comes down to line speed. So I think when you've got the ball and when you can play footy and play, and when you can attack, it's easy to prolong periods of successful attack because when you score, you get the ball back. If you force a repeat set because you're down the other team's end, of course, the 6 agains give you the ball. You get penalties. The other team's getting more fatigue, so then they're going to force more penalties. They're going to potentially give you more 6 agains. They may make more errors. But then what happens is the team that's trying to break the cycle, the team that's being scored against, and the team that doesn't have possession, when they finally get the ball, they're just desperate not to make a mistake. They're going to play a little bit more conservative. They're just trying to hang in there. And the other team has the line speed coming at them. And it's virtually impossible to break that cycle unless you have a superstar player makes a big play that can swing a game, or the opponent makes a big mistake, like gives away a penalty or drops the ball when you're the ones under pressure. So that's why we're seeing these massive sort of momentum swings. I mean, you look at the history of the pod a few years ago, we loved making bets like team not to score 3 unanswered tries. Like that used to be a go-to, especially if you had good defensive sides. You'd say, we're betting a team not to score 3 unanswered tries. We're not even sure they're going to score 3 tries in this game, let alone unanswered. But as you've noticed, I've never taken that bet basically in the last 18 months. It's just a different game now. Now, I'll admit to you guys, help me out here. Like, why do you think all these comebacks are occurring? It's the underdogs is another part of it because every underdog has covered so far. Basically, nearly every underdog has won. You let me know what you think. But I also think teams are just too strong with the footy now, where basically it's impossible to dominate a game for 80 minutes, it seems. I don't know as well if if it's with the stoppages, if it's just impossible for one team to always keep momentum. I don't know if referees are trying to even up the penalty count. But I will tell you the part that I can't figure out. It's that when you get a game that's pretty tight and then it ultimately blows out, you always hear the coach say, well, we didn't have enough possession in the first half, and although we hung in there, it gassed us and it caught up to us in the second half. And you hear teams talk a lot about if they had to do a lot of tackling and if they didn't have their fair share of possession during the game, it eventually catches up with you. And that makes perfect sense. It's more tiring defending than it is attacking, right? But the part that I can't understand then is then how does a team like the Bulldogs today have no ball in the first half, be down 20-0, but then somehow have the energy to come back and absolutely blitz a Raiders side that was in front of a raucous crowd? Like, where do they draw that energy from? Because that Raiders side is so powerful, so hard to handle. And yet you do see these teams absorb all that pressure. So what the game is now, and whether you're a great team or not, just comes down to when the wave is against you, can you hang in there? Can you limit the damage? Do you have the toughness to absorb pressure? Do you have game-breaking players that are going to help you turn the tide? Because you need to be able to turn the tide before the lead gets too big. And when you are riding the wave and when it's going your way, do you have the stars and do you have the execution to take advantage and basically to make hay when the sun shines? And so it just seems like every game is a pendulum swing back and forth, but the good teams just do more damage when it's their turn and limit the damage when it's not. Let's talk a little bit more about Panthers-Cowboys. Cracking game. Cowboys, 2 really good opportunities to kick a field goal in extra time. Drinky and Dearden, each missing like pretty genuine attempts. Cleary did get one shot. It was charged down. This would have been the Blaze Talangi game. He had the first 4 try assists for Penrith, and then the only try he didn't assist was the one he scored himself. I think it was Derby's 5th error of the match, spilling it in his own in goal. And Talangi scores. And at that point, yeah, I did think the best bet was going to get up there. But there was a sting in the tail. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Jackson Purdue is my bolter for Queensland. I think he's your perfect number 14. He's dynamite. He had a hand in multiple comeback tries for the Cowboys. Exciting finish, spurred on by their home fans. Like, that's no joke. Penrith showed us what they could do last week at Magic Round. We all know what they're still capable of after the last 4 or 5 seasons. And Penrith had control of that game, but the Cowboys, wrestled it back, and nobody really deserved to lose that one. But the only loser was me laying -3.5. Well, unfortunately, and the Undertaker, which also means that's the first best bet this whole year where I've agreed with a sharpshooter and we haven't won. Again, the other best bets, we did get cover the line +2.5 with the Dragons, and that's where it pays to take a plus, even if it's a small line, rather than backing a team just to win. Because, of course, the Dragons lost 15-14. Another game with a big comeback. The Dragons were down 14-0. So, in fairness, a comeback where I actually benefited. Then earlier today, we lost because the Raiders were up 20-0 at halftime, but the Bulldogs just came out with an absolute blitz, breathing fire second half, and won the game by 12. I didn't have any best bets on the first 3 games of the round, but of course, you're going to want to talk Broncos, Rabbitohs. That was ridiculous. Broncos led by 14 or 14-0, and the Rabbitohs win 22-14. And Rabbitohs were a 10.5-point underdog, so it keeps the theme of Freaky Friday this year, the amount of double-digit underdogs that have won on Fridays. And then the Titans weren't quite a double-digit underdog, but they were a 6.5-point underdog. Not many people gave them a chance on Friday. Certainly not when they were down 20-0 as well, which makes this the first round in NRL history, I believe, that multiple teams have won after trailing by 20. The Titans did just that. And you know what? Thursday night, my Finns, that was probably the most normal game of the whole round. The Dolphins won 20-16, and that was still a cracking game for mine. And it did involve a comeback. It did involve, the Dolphins were down 12-6 in the second half. So down 6 second half. So if we just look at it globally, you had Eels, $1.70 favourites, leading by a converted try second half, lost. Knights, $1.45 favourites, leading 20-0, lost. Broncos, $1.20 favourites, leading 14-0. So, and I'm quoting the price they were pre-game, not the live odds they would have got to. All these teams would have got to, like, I mean, not so much power, still would have been $1.30, $1.40 live, but some of these other teams would have been $1.05, $1.05 live, right? Including the Raiders favourites, $1.70 favourites when it jumps, leading 20-0. Warriors, $1.70 favourites, leading 14-0. Although the Warriors are the one team that gave up a big lead and actually then responded and won. And as I mentioned before, Penrith, I think we've covered that game pretty well now, but Penrith led by 12 on 2 different points. You know, it led by 12 in the first half, then Cowboys leveled at 18 all, then Penrith led by 12 again. And of course, Cowboys came back, and then we got extra 10 minutes of football where the Cowboys probably came closer to pinching that one. You never know until the end of the year whether that's a valuable point or a point lost. But you would think from where Penrith are on the ladder that, you know, they'll rue that one. And, you know, should there have been a penalty and a shot at goal in the 80th minute for that bomb if it was touched by Drinkwater? I'm sure people will argue that. Appreciate everyone that's jumping in the comments. So Benji says, up the mighty dogs. And, I mean, he's talking about the Bulldogs, I'm sure. But, yeah, underdogs were barking this round. Everyone except Dragons and, well, Cowboys, you get a half win if you bet head-to-head. But a lot of underdogs won outright. Every underdog has covered the line. Crazy. Ryan says, happening in the NBA and NRL, there's something in the air. That's true. If you watch NBA playoffs, the comebacks are ridiculous. I won't even get into it. Sorry, otherwise we'll get on a tangent. But like historical comebacks and historical amounts of comebacks as well. It is crazy. It's like psychologically, these teams start to think they've won the game and switch off. More comebacks than a Kardashian party. JC, you tell me, are you happy or not as a Cowboys fan to get out of that 30-all? Ryan always feels like they don't stand deep enough when going for one-pointers. You know, there's something to that. Like, and I do wonder about, like, why not a double pass back to somebody just so they'd have clear air to take a shot? Because you do get that many. Because when the opponent knows you're going to go for a field goal, the markers always charge. Yes, you can be called offside trying to charge down a field goal attempt, but unless you're blatantly offside, you know the refs let it go, like a little bit of a false start. So you're right. Teams still can't quite get that execution right at the critical moments, time and time again. Andrew, Panthers were lucky. Couple of tries from Cow's mistakes. You know, that's fair. Pancakes. Doggies didn't have to defend their line set up to set, just conceded easily. So that's a fair call as well. But still, the vast majority of first half possession was with the Raiders. And the physicality of that Raiders side, the energy they play with, I would have thought the Dogs would be more sapped. That just makes that win that much more impressive. Blake says, thankfully, that DWZ drops the intercept last play. So that's true as well. I was going to say, who saw that at the end of the Dragons-Warriors game? We're down 14-0. It's not looking good. But the Dragons fight back to 14-all. Anybody could have won it. It's Metcalf that steps up and kicks the field goal. Now it's a 1-point game. Now I'm worried that the Dragons will do something silly and give away a penalty, and the Warriors will take the 2 late to chew clock and we'll lose by 3, and we had plus 2.5. And that was a concern right up till the end when the Dragons actually get the ball with about 10 seconds to go. Of course, they're going to toss it around, and it's nearly an intercept try to DWZ, but he does drop it. Not that he cared, because that just smothered out the game, but that would have absolutely crushed me. At least that was the one best bet winner. Of course, if I didn't mention before, Padonis was on that too, and he continues to be scorching hot with his favorite tip of the weeks. Higgins says, I sub to you. Appreciate it, guys. Please subscribe to the pod, even if you're just a regular like YouTube viewer. It really does help subscribing, especially at this point in time, this precarious point in time for the pod where we're still trying to secure some sort of sponsorship, some sort of future for the pod. Yeah, Harry Potter says just going to start watching second halves. Like, that's what I'm getting at. Like, someone once said to me, there's nothing more useless to check than a first quarter NBA score. Like, it means nothing. I've always said, if your team's up 10 in the first quarter of the NBA, like, it means nothing. Like, you're never going to think, oh, my tip's going to win. right? It's starting to be that way with NRL. Like if you checked the score during these games, it was meaningless. It probably led you to think the wrong team won nearly every game. Jeff says, do you dump Derby or give him another chance? Yeah, 4+ lost balls. Like it's hard to come back from that. It was one of those nights, but he did score the try, did he not? At the end, that leveled the score. I mean, he's had some good moments this year, but it was an unfortunate night for Derby. But at least the Cowboys didn't lose. All right, let's go all the way back to Thursday night. So I'll have to go a little bit quicker on these games. I understand it is pretty late. As Darky says, rubbish face, get the F out of here. And yeah, I know, I agree with you, honestly. That's just the face card I was dealt. All right, look, I was so proud of the Dolphins here because this really is a pretty tough trip. I know people look at it and say Eels, bottom of the ladder. They're legit middle of the road team with the ability they've got with Moses back. I talked about how, yeah, the Eels might be 2-7, but they're 1-1 with Moses. They're a little bit better with Dylan Walker there as well. But showing signs of life, have ability in attack, defense coming on a little bit. Like the Eels were tough in that game against Sharks at Magic Round, and at home, not easy to beat. And the Dolphins had to pretty well play close to perfect. Now, I think people make too much of completion rate and talk about, well, if a team, completes in the 90 percentile, you're going to win. Or like, obviously, if you complete 100%, that's like perfect. Well, if that was the case, if all you had to do was complete 100%, then you could just run it from dummy half 5 times and then kick it, right? But you probably wouldn't win because you actually have to do something with the footy. So completion rate's not everything. But having said that, Dolphins almost error-free the entire game. I think the completion rate ended up 96%. They needed to be that good just to win this game by a try. And it comes down to desperation defense, where the Dolphins had an 8-point lead, and I'm thinking they're going to get a great win here. That was after trailing 12-6. The Dolphins got in front 20-12. But then Parramatta strikes back. That Dylan Brown try. So yeah, Dylan Brown try cut the margin to 4. Someone in the comments was talking about how this was 3 tries each, but the Eels aren't letting Moses take the conversion attempts. It's Sean Russell, and the 2 misses is the difference between the side. And I think it's because he's trying to protect that foot, potentially Moses, and maybe not practicing his goal kicking during the week. But there's been 1 or 2 games where Moses has had to take a conversion and he's nailed them. So, of course, it leads to the question, like, should Moses be the goal kicker for Para? Would that be the difference? Even in this game, had they converted late, Parramatta, you get within 2, it opens up different possibilities with the 2-point field goal. But nevertheless, the Eels knew they were down a try, trying to pinch the win. Couple of super close opportunities. Like I thought Penasini had bowled over Herbie, but Herbie just hangs on to his jersey and rips him down a meter short of the line, which is a really hard tackle to make when you're moving backwards when the Dolphins were in serious trouble and on their heels. And then a line break right at the end, and the hammer gets across and makes a game-saving tackle. Like those are match-winning tackles. Incredibly tough win by the Dolphins. The Dolphins were 3-6 going into that. Like absolutely had to win that to keep the season alive. Like it really hurts Para fans, but as a Dolphins fan, I'm very proud. Like that's one of our toughest wins in the last, in the 2.5 years we've been in the NRL. Okay, then this was wild. Knights Titans. It just and you want to give credit to anybody who wins a game, but I feel like the Titans were so bad in the first 30 minutes of this game where they were down 20-0. And then the Knights just outdid them and were even worse for the final 50 minutes of the game. See, the Knights got their confidence back in Magic Round and showed that actually there's a bit of spark in this attack, and obviously going through Fletcher Sharp, who scored a try again in this one. And we know that the Knights are under the radar really good defensively. And then the Titans have just been woeful recently. Jaden Campbell came back. I thought that could spark them. But honestly, for the first hour of this game, it looked like Campbell was still injured and shouldn't have even been there. So the Titans, what I will give credit for is an awesome try just before halftime, a great team try where the Titans kept the ball alive. Just show when they get their hands on the footy, how dangerous they can be. That's never really been the Titans' problem, scoring some points. And we always talk about that critical try just before halftime, cut the lead from 20-0 to 20-6. And then second half, the Titans with the running, got themselves well and truly back in the game as Ulad, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, says Knights 0 point second half. The Knights just went into a shell, no confidence, making mistakes, just going away from what was working for them in the first half, and basically feeling that they had done enough. And in front of that fan base that's so loyal, just went to water. And the Titans just rode a wave and basically just barely had to do any sustained tackling in the second half. So had energy and actually get the winning try late. That Englishman, that Pommy number 6, Brimson, with the winning try. Just ridiculous. Like 20-0 comeback is crazy in any game. But when it's a team like the Titans that have been so bad, like how could you predict that coming? And they were a decent sized underdog. And I just feel like all the pressure was on Des going into this week. There were already rumors about how, Des is out if Titans don't make the 8. Kevy could be the next Titans coach. Right? What amount of pressure that relieves off Des, and it basically just transfers it all to the other coach's box, because Adam O'Brien, he had this Knights team 2-0, then they lost 5 in a row, then they showed what they could do at Magic Round with a big emphatic victory, but now losing at home to the Titans, like that's basically as low as it gets. The Titans are probably close to the worst form team going into round 10, and you were at home and you're up 20-0, and the Titans came back and win. So that was wild, but that's what I've spoken about with the Titans, is that they're just not an 80-minute team. But if they could just play with some toughness, and I suppose the toughness was hanging in there, turning the tide. And certainly it's not a coincidence that these games are changing after halftime. I think teams, as I say, it comes back down to me. If I just can put my finger on what is the reason behind these massive momentum waves, it really is just line speed. It's so hard to make meters or make anything happen when you're when you haven't had repeat sets. You're often starting at a bad territory and the opponent's just up in your face. And that's so easy to do when you've got energy and you're up and about, and it's so hard to turn. But I suppose after a halftime break, you refuel the energy tank a little bit, you come back out, and then you can try and turn it. And you've also got to play positively. You can't play to avoid errors. You've got to try and chase the game. And sometimes that makes teams more dangerous because they will promote the footy a bit more. They will play with a little bit more shape, get the ball to important players a little bit more often. And some teams are actually freed up a bit once they've got nothing to lose. And that was certainly the Titans. And that puts the Knights in the hurt locker for sure. Then you had Friday night, and I said going into the Rabbitohs-Broncos clash that these were the worst two teams of Magic Round. So both needed a response. But Brisbane more so, a lot more pressure on Brisbane because the expectations. And just how about these form lines for the Broncos? They win 4 of the first 5, only loss down in Canberra. That's pretty forgivable. And then the last 5 games, the Broncos have 1 win. 1 from 5. But what makes it even more incomprehensible is that the 1 win is over the ladder-leading Bulldogs. And they flogged them as well. So how does someone make it make sense to me? And look, I'll take full responsibility for that best bet losing where I took the Bulldogs over the Broncos because, I picked the bad spot and got flogged, right? But it's like, that's the only game the Dogs have lost. And every other week, the Dogs have been awesome. And I came out of that period where Brisbane were beaten by the Roosters at home, and then beaten by the Warriors, and albeit it went to extra time, but beaten by the Warriors in New Zealand. And I just said, Brisbane still hasn't figured out exactly how to play. They're still working it all out. They don't quite look like they're firing on all cylinders yet. I just don't think this Broncos team, has found the recipe yet. Then they just play perfect football and destroy Bulldogs and just make me look stupid and look like an absolutely true contender. But then straight after the Bulldogs win, then Brisbane is flogged at home by Penrith and then blows a 14-0 lead and is outscored 22-0 to conclude the game by the Rabbitohs. And I kind of feel like that was a fair observation about Brisbane, that somehow that one outlier was the ridiculous win over the Bulldogs, and the Bulldogs' one outlier was that also that game in Brisbane. Every other game, the Bulldogs have been unreal. And so let's just let's talk a little bit more about the Rabbitohs game, because I do want to say, okay, we know Hunt is injured, Mam will come straight back in. So everyone was like, oh, how will Madge decide? Oh, maybe if Brisbane's winning, he'll just keep Mam in reserve grade or whatever. They got to sort of take the moral high ground and say, oh, we'll move Mam back in slowly, make him earn his way in, play him in Queensland Cup. I believe he plays tomorrow. But there was always half a chance that one of the mid-30s halves on this team was going to be injured, and then they wouldn't have to drop anybody. And the other thing is, it's not like Madge can be accused of unsettling a winning team, because this Brisbane team is searching for a lot of answers. So now Mam actually has the opportunity to repay the side that's obviously paying him a really hefty contract and has stuck by him through this adversity. And it is controversial. A lot of people disagree. And I'll just say my personal opinion, I thought it was an incredibly lenient suspension that he got. I think it was actually borderline ridiculous how little the sort of Mam got punished. But whatever it is, it still did hurt him, and it still did hurt the team to an extent. So now Mam has to try and, regain that trust, regain the faith, and try and help Brisbane turn this season back around, because that's a roster that people expected a lot out of. Madge expects a lot out of any team he coaches, and every time that Brisbane fail or underperform, and this is a failure, you're a 10.5 point favourite and you lost, and you led by 14, so it's even worse. Then the pressure is just that much more magnified, because obviously something's going wrong if you can't get results like that. So that's what I have to say about Brisbane, who looked like they just expected it to happen too easily after getting that lead in the first half. But I do think this game in particular wasn't all about Brisbane being bad. I do have to give a heap of credit to the Rabbitohs coming back and just say, Latrell, he's him. When teams have special players like Latrell, it gives them more confidence to just hang in the game, knowing that one guy can change it all with one moment. If you can do your job and not let the opponent get anything easy, these superstars can take over games. That's what Latrell did late. Like, when he kicked that 2-point field goal from the halfway line, I was just like marveling at it. I was just laughing. Like, he's a bad boy to do that. Like, very few players are going to even attempt that, let alone to just execute it to perfection. The final try was honestly a bit cheeky, because the game's basically over. Latrell drops to one knee. So if Billy Walters smashes him, then Billy Walters looks like the bad guy. So he did kind of play possum there. It doesn't change the result. It just adds a little bit of salt into the wound. Anyway, Latrell had already won the game for the Rabbitohs before then. I just want to say, as, again, Ulid says Wayne Bennett magic, like, there's something really to that. Like, some of these wins, let's not forget the Rabbitohs were down 24-12 to the Dragons. And that was away from home in like round 2 or round 3, and had really no right to win that. I think they were down to no one on the bench, like picked up 4 or 5 injuries, just kept on fighting, actually got the win there. And then what about that derby with the Roosters? Like, the Rabbitohs, again, a lot of injuries in that game. Roosters in total control. It was just nothing but pure grit and toughness that got the Rabbitohs over the line on that game. I think that was the game where Bennett said it was one of the toughest wins in his whole coaching career across every club, across nearly 1,000 games. And this one had to be in the mix as well. The Rabbitohs to keep fighting. There's no Cody Walker. We talked about losing your captain, Cam Murray, before the season, and to still be in the game here and in with a chance to win it. They get it to 14 all, and then it's that Latrell field goal that seals the deal. Like, the Rabbitohs have the same win-loss record as Brisbane now. They're both 5-5. But the Rabbitohs, with the roster they've got, with the injuries they've had, that's actually insane. And how bad the South Sydney Rabbitohs looked at Magic Round, what a difference a week makes. It's such a guts win by the Rabbitohs. And Brisbane are going to be soul-searching. And it's not going to be easy either, because Brisbane will lose some of their best players over the Origin period. So games like this were just absolute must-haves, like had-to-have type games. And Brisbane will be asking themselves a lot of questions as to how they didn't get this done. So then we fast forward to the Savo, and geez, yeah, you talk about a game of two halves, guys. I mean, again, a bit dirty, but I'm just sort of stunned that we had a best bet win, leading 20-0, didn't win, and we somehow lost it. And the Raiders have just been going so well this year. Like, again, talking about how this season doesn't make much sense. Can we just remember the Raiders were down 16-0 to the Titans? They were down 28-10 to the Dolphins. They were down 14-0 to the Storm. They came back and won all those games. And then this week, when they're winning 20-0, they lose. They're better off to be down 3 tries than to be up 4 tries. It's just insane. And you'd think a team that has had all these big comebacks, what would they be saying at halftime in the sheds? Boys, look what we did the last 3 weeks. The game's not over. You play for 80. Teams can come back. It's been happening this round. It's happened in all of our previous games. But I thought the story of this game was just going to be Canberra. Are they true contenders? Look at the energy down there at GIO. They hadn't lost a game before today. The team just plays so physical, so much confidence. But they dead set played as if they thought they'd won the game. The way they were celebrating, sort of carrying on and getting a standing ovation, I don't blame them in the first half. But Canberra played like a team second half that thought the game was already over. Bulldogs played like a team with nothing to lose. And it goes back to the point I did make on the Tuesday preview. I don't know if there's a player in better form on the planet greater than Stephen Crichton. I mean, he's just ridiculous. And Stephen Crichton had a massive hand in turning the tide in this game. Anytime he got early ball out to the right, he was giving the Raiders fits. I mean, the try he scores where he's holding it like it's a loaf of bread or like a tennis ball, and making defenders look silly, and has a big hand in other line breaks that leads the way to this Bulldogs win. And I think we got the try saver tackle of the season as well, where the Bulldogs made a line break. They looked like they had just cut the lead from 20 to it was going to be 20 to 18. It was Tracy going in basically next to the sticks, and Ethan Strange comes up with the most amazing try saver you've ever seen. But the Bulldogs scored the very next play. So it sort of undid all that. And the Bulldogs just carried on with it. And this is the Bulldogs team without Jacob Preston, who was a fringe origin smoky. Curran's out, Tupanua out. So a lot of people went into this game questioning, are the Bulldogs true contenders or have they just had a cakewalk? And I said, I still think the Bulldogs are really good. I think the Bulldogs are better than the Raiders. But on this day, with who's available, I thought the Raiders were the slightly better team. And at home, I played it that way and just got blitzed that second half. But a lot of credit to the Bulldogs. I mean, I wish they could have made a comeback like that in that Brisbane game. But yeah, that was absolutely just scorching hot champagne footy second half. And the Raiders were absolutely stunned. And the Raiders, this is what I'm talking about with these games of runs and games of momentum. You're just desperately trying to break that cycle. You're trying to come up with a play that flips it back in your favor. The closest the Raiders probably came was that Fogarty 40-20 that went out at the 21. If that gets the ball back for the Raiders, at that point, the score was about 20 all or 26-20 only. Then maybe it's a different game. But the Raiders couldn't find that play. And that's where it pays to have like true superstar players, because they're the types of players that can come up with something out of nothing, like Stephen Crichton did, that really can change games. And that just leaves me one to talk about, because we started with Cowboys Panthers. So Warriors Dragons, Warriors, another great win after a tight win at Magic Round to get another win in Australia. This is not an easy one. I called this a kitchen sink game for the Dragons. Now, on a positive note for pod followers, we won with +2.5 on St. George. Didn't look great when it was 14-0 Warriors in the first half. Although that wasn't the halftime score. Dragons got a valuable try just before halftime. I do have a point about the Dragons. It is somewhat ironic that you've recruited Val Holmes, and he was such a sharpshooter of a goal kicker over the last couple of years for the Cowboys, and he's missed important goals. And today, the Dragons lost in a game they scored more tries, and Val Holmes missed 2 conversions. I'm pretty sure missed them both from to the left of the post. And he's a right-footed kicker that has a nice right to left sort of arc on his kicks. To me, those goal kicks is sort of the difference. And the Dragons have lost multiple games by 1 point this year, and goal kicking has burned them. The other thing that has burned the Dragons is their halves play. The Dragons have been in several games where it's level or it's one score late, and you need your halves to step up. And we already see that the Dragons rely a lot on, the expertise or the experience and guile of their 9 and their 1. Like it's Damien Cook is creating, or it's Gutherson ball playing, and they're taking pressure off the halves. But at some point, the halves have to step up. And in this game, when it was 14 all, and you're looking for a field goal to get the lead, or once you're down 1, a field goal is still obviously going to tie, or a 2-point field goal to lead, or come up with a different play. The halves are missing for the Dragons. The only one that wants to step up and kick a field goal is Val Holmes, is a centre. He's coming in field and pointing and directing people. So at some point, having the, how do I say it nicely, like the weakest halves combination in the comp is hurting you in close games. And that's sort of what you expect. And it's even more awkward when one of the halves is the coach's son. But it's just not trying to be cruel about it, but just pointing out sort of like an inadequacy or an area that needs to improve for the Dragons to make noise. But just feels like this is not going to be the Dragons' year. Like this, they were the one team this round that actually was down double digits, came all the way back, but then didn't get a result. Because at least you can say the Cowboys got 1 point out of it. But as for the Warriors, to have that toughness, to sustain, like to reclaim the lead, to respond to the Dragons, who had all the second half momentum and were at home, and the Dragons were playing with belief, like they were going to overcome the Warriors and win. And for Metcalf, who's had good and bad moments this year, but mostly good, and obviously missed some opportunities against Brisbane, but gets the winning moment in extra time and steps up and drains a field goal. And we talk about how critical that was in some of the tight games this round. Latrell being able to do it, Metcalf being able to do it. It's such a big swing between either taking home the 2 points or your opponent does. And, Metcalf always a running threat as well. He had the first try today. He's growing with confidence every week. I certainly questioned whether that halves combination was going to work for the Warriors, because we saw how poor they were, let's say, in week 1 in Vegas, which was, a game that got a lot of attention. But the Warriors sort of had that plan, they've stuck with it. And Warriors are a team that completes high, that plays physical, that defends at a high level, that doesn't need to score a lot of points or tries to, win a game. Jake says Holmes one of the straightest kickers of the ball in the comp. Very little. Always appreciate Jake tuning in. But did you see that final conversion he did? He finally sort of used the curve and actually kicked it. That was the only one he kicked today. Ryan Clemmer didn't even try and charge the kick down. So, a little bit of footy awareness as well goes a long way. But you talk about it just doesn't feel like it's the Dragons' year. As for the Warriors easily could have lost today. And the Warriors easily and probably should have lost last week. I thought they were goners when they were still up by 10. I was in this crowd. Like, the Cowboys were absolutely coming for them. But somehow the Warriors just hanging on in games where in the past they would have let that slip. And the belief is definitely growing. And they're doing this without their marquee signing as well. The Vicious Fish is going to come back into this team. RCS is still out injured, so you're going to get experience and star power back into this side. So things are cooking. And, I said New Zealand fans, they're my favourite in the game. So they deserve to be very excited. Dragons fans, not a lot to cheer about since 2010, unfortunately. And it doesn't look like it's going to be your year. And then this game as well, Cowboys-Panthers, already kind of covered it, but 30 all, extra time. That's why this pod has ended up being so late. As if it wasn't already going to be a late pod, then of course it went extra time. But I'm here for it. Love this sport. Love chatting about it. We still, we got through 40 minutes of the best, and that's with 2 games to go. And so if you're listening to this, this was recorded Saturday night. I'm going to assume that the Tigers will get out by 2 or 3 tries tomorrow, and then the Storm will reel them in and probably not cover, because I've was whinging that we've gone 2-2 for the last 3 straight weeks. I didn't want to go 2-2 this week. Now the best I can do with best bets is 2-2. So I'll probably get what I wished for and I'll probably go 1-3 and have a losing round. But just can only assume that the Storm, there'll be a massive comeback in the Storm Tigers game. And then you'd probably assume the same. The Sharkies will get out to a decent lead and then Manly will come back because there's something in the air, as Ryan said, something in the water. This is one of the wildest rounds of rugby league I can ever remember. And while it's highly entertaining, I can't explain it all. I can try to, and I can try and give reasons of why things are happening, and certainly enjoy talking about it and hearing how you guys are seeing it as well. But some of the stuff you can't explain. And that's the beauty of this competition too, that you can't draw straight form lines and it's not predictable, and that's why we love it. But yeah, some of these results and even what's happening within a game is very hard to sort of make it make sense. But hopefully you've enjoyed sort of my short breakdown, or not so short breakdown, but me getting my teeth stuck into round 10 there. I'll be back on Tuesday, try and find more winners for round 11. So again, have a great Sunday, guys, and happy Mother's Day to pod mothers and mothers of pod households out there. Cheers, guys. Good night. Lego.